Now that's Back to the Future?
John Williams would be so proud.
He's like, yeah, you really captured the brassiness and the arrhythmic nature of my scores.
Welcome to Your Inner Child is an Idiot, the podcast where we look back on things from our childhood and see if they're any good. My name is DJ.
And I'm Damon.
Damon, what's your dog's name?
Sunshine.
Sunshine.
My childhood dog's name was Sunshine.
Mine was.
Do you think
Abby.
Indiana Jones
So
would have been his
Abby
drag
Phillips.
name? Sorry,
Yeah.
what was your dog's name?
Abby. Just a
Perfect.
really
Abby
adventure-
Phillips
sounds like an
and
adventure.
Sunshine Xanthopoulos.
And yours is so much better.
I sound like a hippie, a Greek hippie, but a hippie nonetheless.
I actually met a
Go
woman
see
named
Sunshine at the
I've-
Sweat Lodge.
I worked with a woman named Sunshine. She was a really good singer.
Did she match her name? In that she was 4 million degrees.
No, she was actually she was a nice person, but maybe a little dour, which I thought was odd. But, she didn't pick her name. It wasn't like a stage name. It was like her actual name.
It's a fun juxtaposition.
We're watching Raiders of the Lost Ark, not Indiana Jones 1, as I am wont to call it.
Although later, I think DVD releases. Oi! Check out these DVD releases. I think that was probably my most accurate Australian
really good,
accent that I've ever done.
Now you've thought about
For
it,
the
and it's
show.
never going to happen again.
It's nope. Don't be too self-conscious about it, Damon. Let it happen. Let it happen. For DVD releases, they added Indiana Jones into the name because they were like, I don't like the juxtaposition of, at the time, these two other movies with Indiana Jones of the 4, and then just some anonymous raiders at the beginning of the first one.
Do you
So
think
they
they
threw
were
it in
like
there.
not confident in the Indiana Jones, like
People
the whole
like
thing?
the Philadelphia Raiders, so put them in.
The
Is it the Philadelphia Raiders? Who is it? Who is the team?
There's one that are now the Las Vegas Raiders that were originally
Las Vegas.
They've been the Los Angeles Raiders, they've been the Oakland Raiders. You're
Is there
probably
a
thinking of my
baseball
hometown
team?
Wright State University Raiders. That's probably what you're thinking of.
Is there not a baseball team with Raiders?
There might be somewhere in some league, but not in a professional league that I'm aware of.
I want to say one thing because we already did the score adeptly earlier. One of my most cherished memories of my friend Bethany, I don't know what she was trying to do. She was trying to win me over with her knowledge of the Indiana Jones series.
Mm-hmm.
And so she started singing the score at me. This was in college.
Always good.
And
You want to sing at people.
make
as much
sure
as
that they're
possible.
not engaged, that they are just ciphers for you to sing at. And she started singing it, and at first started strong, and then I'll just sing what she sang and see if you can catch where she goes awry.
Okay.
Bum ba dum bum.
Right.
Bum ba dum bum. That was it. I liked it that it took a minor moment. Bum ba dum bum. I'm like, I don't think that's the
You did not make it very far at all, Bethany. I also she missed my favorite part where she's like, no,
she didn't. I mean, it would have been weirder if I was just sitting there silently and she was going into different sections. Of the score, different movements.
She does like the underscore when you're supposed to be doing like exposition at the beginning of the movie.
She's doing the theme to the Well of the Souls. I'm like, look, I've got to get to Psych. I can't just sit here this entire.
I'm busy.
That's the Well of the Souls song. If it's not obvious, I do like the Indiana Jones movies, but I haven't seen them probably in 10 or 15 years.
Yeah, I haven't seen this
And I'm
one
nervous
in, a really
in
long
this
time.
culture of, hey, you can't take people's things and put them in museums outside of the home country. And you can't just shoot brown people in the street, even if they're, going to attack you with a sword. Well, I guess you can probably self-defense, shoot people who are brandishing a sword at you,
That's the main thing I'm worried about with these movies is the sort of inappropriateness as we go back to it, because I loved Indiana Jones, especially, my favorite, not to give it away, has always been the third one, The Last Crusade. That's
Save
also
it for the
because
tape.
it came up when, I think I actually saw that one in the theaters, and the other two I was...
Right.
This one came out in 1981. I wasn't even born yet, but it was definitely around. And then Temple of Doom, I think I was probably too young to have seen it in the theaters or remember it, but I definitely had seen it because it was so much later. The Last Crusade has always been like my one, and then you go back and watch the other ones. But I don't think there's a whole host of things, like the very idea of an archaeologist, going to different countries, like you said, and going,
taking
this
their
thing
shit
that you have from your country belongs in a museum, which
my museum
time,
specifically.
Was supposed to be this noble thing, and he isn't. It's not so much that he's saying it doesn't belong with the indigenous people. He's saying it doesn't belong with these people who are going to sell it to the highest bidder or something. But still,
or to Nazis who are going to use it as some sort of paranormal tool to take over the world.
Right.
I think that's how they sidestep it a little bit. Is like, look, we're not taking it. We're just trying to have Nazis not have it.
Right.
Pulling the old switcheroo on some white supremacists. A tale as old as time.
Can you bring a little bit of your Bible knowledge into this? Does the Bible mention how the Lost Ark of the Covenant melts faces like an Eric Clapton solo? I
think it's kind of up to interpretation depending on which version of the Bible. Are you reading the Latin?
I want the one
Vulgate?
that melts faces.
Are you looking at the Greek? Are you looking at the original Hebrew? The original Hebrew said that it would give you a nice tan, but if you translate that into Latin and then translate that into Greek, it comes out as melts faces off.
Right.
So I can see where the confusion came from.
Sure, that makes sense. It's all in the language. Were you a big Indiana Jones person? Did you watch a lot?
Yeah, remember Bethany was singing the theme at me to win me over, to charm me?
I'm talking about when you were a little kid.
I do like Indiana Jones a lot. I think because I wasn't as into Star Wars, at least as a kid. I have memories of watching Temple of Doom on tape, and then mom renting Last Crusade seemingly every weekend. It felt like we rented it a lot. And it wasn't until the 90s or maybe 2000s where I was like, I'm going to buy DVD copies of these so we can have them and stop bothering the people at It's Showtime Video, mother. Right. I remember my dad I'm going to save that for the third one because that's specific to the third one. I like that he was an intellectual, a semi, an academic, professor, Dr. Jones. You call him Dr. Jones. And I also liked, one of the things I liked about Indiana Jones is that he doesn't necessarily fight fair. He will throw sand in your face if they will get you to stop punching him in the stomach. And I can respect that as a person who doesn't know how to fight fair. I can only fight for survival. Maybe. That's why I keep my fingernails a little long. Just in case there's ever, a fascist who wants to murder me. Yeah.
Speaking of fascists, do you remember when we just kind of all agreed that it was bad to be a Nazi?
I thought we had agreed upon it. I thought we had come to an understanding, except for a handful of people out in Montana. But now it seems to be open for debate again.
I'm going to stand firm with my original dislike of them. So.
Hey, don't get political. Don't make it super political.
Well, if you keep calling me a Nazi, I'm going to have to just be a Nazi. That's my favorite logic. Anyway,
I gotcha. I guess I own those libs.
Is this the one where somebody comes up and fight, or is that in Temple of Doom where he just shoots them in this one? In the second one, he can't, right? So the guy comes up and does all this sword fight. I'm trying to think of things that I remember from.
Yes, this one has there's a whole street scene where they're being chased, and at the end of it, he's encountered by this guy who's brandishing this huge scimitar that's the size of my body, and Indiana Jones just shoots him. Not a fair fighter. Again, I can't stress enough. He's not a fair fighter.
When the lore of...
I believe there's a behind-the-scenes story where Harrison Ford had Giardia or a stomach virus and was just like, look, I'm not going to do a whole fight scene with this guy. I'm just going to shoot him. Thanks, Steven. Bye. I'll be in my trailer shitting my brains out.
I like that. I don't know if that's 100% true, but I like it. I like that as a story.
Apocryphal, to bring it back to the Bible.
Oh,
No.
holy!
I think what's interesting about this is that it's a very specific reference to like movies that we did not grow up with. It's Spielberg and Lucas referencing something from their own childhood, these Republic serials and Treasure of the Sierra Madre with Charlton Heston, where these like guys would go out hunting for treasure. It's a very much a throwback to something I can't relate to. So now when I see adventure movies now, to me, it's a throwback to this, which oftentimes, honestly, they are. But I think they do a good job of like, I feel like going into this, I'm just going to be constantly thinking of the landscape we're in now in movie business, where everyone's just like, we got to resuscitate this IP, this brand, this franchise, where everyone talks like that. And instead of doing what we do now, it's just like, well, who can we cast as Indiana Jones and to make the next 3 disappointing Indiana Jones movies going forward, or will Indiana Jones Jr. or Mrs. Indiana Jones, and we'll just make those going forward. And what Steven Spielberg did, and I wish we could get back to this mindset, was like, I liked these things when I was a kid, so I'm going to make a direct homage to those things, but make it my own so I don't have all the fucking baggage of Treasure of the Sierra Madre. And George Lucas is like, I don't have all the baggage of, Kurosawa movies and samurai movies and, Flash Gordon. I can do my own thing. And where we're in the same mindset, but instead of coming up with our own thing, now I'm just getting grumpy. You know what? You got me on the train track, and I'm just like cruising down conversations I've already had alone in my kitchen, pretending I'm being interviewed by someone. But it's like, just come up with your own
George,
thing. You're never gonna enjoy the latest Star Wars as much as you did the first Star Wars. You're not gonna get that high again.
Because you were a child.
Make something new, and you'll get excited about it again. But if you keep making another Star Wars, I come to Star Wars for something different than you come to Star Wars with, which 30 million other people come to Star Wars for 30 million other reasons. We don't have to keep remaking Star Wars, and I have to listen to all these white boys on Twitter be like, this is why this one sucks. And I'm like, I kind of liked it. Or more usually I'm like, it did suck, but not for the reasons you say it sucked.
These other reasons. Yeah, but
for
I think
these others, not misogynist reasons it sucked.
Well, and there's always been that sort of art versus commerce fight, right? Especially in Hollywood, it's a very big business, but it's more corporatized, where they're like, if I make an Indiana Jones movie, I've got like built in. It's not a guarantee, but it is a step ahead of something brand new, like
right. If I hear that music in a trailer, I'm just going to be immediately like, well, this is going to suck, but I'm probably going to see it because I am a stupid idiot.
Well, and it's same, but it's the same. Part of that is, we have talked about this, and we are doing an entire podcast about it, but like, our generation is so obsessed with it.
We're not the best missionaries on this point, where we completely rehash old things. I'm like, why does everyone keep remaking this stuff again? Anyway, let's look at Indiana Jones 4.
We're so obsessed with ourselves. Like, we want to, like, there's something comforting to that, and there's something not innately problematic about it. But when that's all it is, it's just like a snake eating its own tail over and over again, where you're just like, just make something. And then when someone does something fresh, something new, it is so much more refreshing because you're just breaking out of that cycle. But it's very few and far between and really hard to get made, even. And
then they make 6 of those, that new
and
thing.
Then, they're going to beat that to death. But anyway, we're going to watch Raiders of the Lost Ark, starring, who's even in this? What's the guy's name?
Johnny points a lot.
Steve Smith.
Smith, he's great in it. Yeah, we got Harrison Ford. We got Karen Allen, everyone's favorite.
Yeah, the original love interest.
The orig Bond girl. We got creepy McHand face, the Vichy Nazi sympathizer. All your favorites. Who?
Is Gimli in this one, or is he come later?
Gimli is in this one. He's in the odd numbered Indiana Jones movies.
Okay.
Them's the rules.
It makes sense.
It's
We're gonna
simple
watch
math.
Raiders of the Lost Ark. We'll be right back. Damon, you're a no-nonsense guy. Indiana Jones is a no-nonsense adventurer. We're going to have a no-nonsense Patreon commercial. If you'd like to support
I feel like
the
I'm
show,
mostly nonsense.
I feel like Indiana Jones is kind of a lot of nonsense, too. But
There's some nonsense.
This is a no-nonsense commercial.
Nonsense.
Patreon.com/YourInnerChild'sAnIdiot. You can become a supporter of the show. You can get your name written in the credits. You can get your name written in the written credits. You can get special bonus episodes. I think we've got, 8 of them currently. I don't know. We're going to do more coming up soon. We're going to do in September. We're going to start the live stream of the Rings of Power, which can only be for patrons. We'd love to hear from our patrons.
Which can only be for patrons, as destined by a rock we found. It can only be for patrons.
We love hearing from our patrons.
And the Lord spake,
Jesus
it shall
Christ.
only be for patrons.
Remember when I said this had to be short? Do you remember that
nonsense.
before?
No nonsense, I believe, was the term.
We love hearing from our patrons. We have a short message from John Day, so we'd like to play that for you now. Thanks for leaving a message, John.
Hey, this is Jonathon Day. You can call me John. Thank you for doing the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle 2 episode. I did just listen to that, and I appreciated it. First of all, I always liked Leonardo as a kid, so I have that going for me, and also Donatello, so I agree with you on that. No, I'm not going to make you watch Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 3, Turtles in Time. It's a horrible movie, and I agree with you on that. I do have really good memories of Secrets of the Ooze, and this is like the hard part for me listening to this podcast because I do love it. And it was like, oh, but apparently my inner child is an idiot in that regard. I do have to say, I work as a scientist. When I dispose of samples, I just look at them like bottles of things, and I'm just like, disposed, which apparently comes from this movie. So yeah, like DJ, I do have good memories of this movie, but then watching it as an adult, yeah, it's not the best. Anyway, keep up the good work. Have fun. I'll talk to you guys later. Bye.
Thank you, Jonathan. John, if I may. And it sounds like I may.
He goes by both.
We probably will watch TMNT 3 at some point.
Eventually, we're going to start scraping like the bottom of the barrel under this current barrel we're in. So TMNT 3 is probably still in the running. Don't try and hide, John. Don't try and hide. Going to feudal Japan sooner or later.
We're all going to feudal Japan eventually.
Since we recorded that episode, DJ, David Warner, the character who plays scientist, passed away.
He did.
He himself.
He did.
Was disposed.
He went to the great pepperoni heaven in this. I had the joke lined up.
Locked and loaded.
I couldn't get through it.
Because it was so disrespectful of a recently deceased man.
That's why.
Probably his wife and kids. Maybe even grandkids. He was only 80. Were you surprised by the fact that David Warner was only 80?
He's he's
got Olympia Dukakis syndrome, where it feels like he's been old for thousands of years. But apparently he was just 80.
There's people that hover in that sort of like 60s and 70s look for a good 40 years, which doesn't seem possible.
Yeah, when I was a kid, I was very thrown off by Steve Martin. That he just seemed to be...
the hair.
The hair just completely... I have hair blindness. And when Steve Martin had his white hair as a kid, I was just like, how is he not dead yet? It's been at least 10 years, I said as a child, about a man. I didn't know. How is he not dead yet?
And we are back. We watched Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Yeah, we sure did.
We had such a swashbuckling adventure with our friend Indiana Jones. Whip-buckling? Is swashbuckling only for pirates? I think this is swashbuckling.
I feel like swashbuckling is reserved for pirates, but I would say that daring had been done. Daring do.
He did
the
do
past
daring.
tense of daring do. Yeah. Daring done. So I would say there's that. What else would be? There were thrills, chills, some spills.
Yeah, some spills. I'll tell you what. I'm going to recap this one because I want you to recap the next one, Temple of Doom. So there's a very... Indiana Jones is an adventurous archaeologist, like they mostly are, and is tasked with helping to find the long-lost Ark of the Covenant and trying to get it before the Nazis do. He doesn't really, but then the Ark melts the Nazis' faces, and the Ark of the Covenant is lost to some military installation where it's guarded by top men.
Top men. Did you recognize top men? Did you recognize that guy?
Wait, the mustache guy?
Yeah, Biggs from Star Wars. He gets blowed up. I think it's Biggs. I remember his name is
Oh, it's like
for a larger fellow,
right?
I was
Isn't
like, it's a little offensive. Maybe it's not Biggs. That's too straightforward. It's, but that's who that guy is.
No, I didn't make that recognition. But that's basically the plot of Raiders of the Lost Ark. There's lots in there.
I do appreciate that you mentioned that Indiana Jones pretty much just fails throughout and just kind of gets a mulligan from Yahweh at the end, where it's like, all right, you survived, so I guess you get the Ark now.
As of this decade, the new take is that he didn't affect the story, and I think we should get to that. But let's
is that
get
true?
to that. Yeah, that's a new take on it, or newer, I guess.
He could have just sat at home, and the Nazis still would have burned their faces off.
That's, I guess, what some people are.
Except Marion would probably be dead.
Yeah, that's okay. Let's just talk about it. So that's what I think. I think like, so he did eventually, if we say where it ended up is good, which arguable either way, it wouldn't have happened if without Indiana Jones interference, because there would have been no one there to like recover it. It would have been lost.
True. The Nazis never would have found it.
They never would have found it. So if we think that where it was at the beginning of the story is better, then yes, Indiana Jones made things actively worse. But it depends on like, this movie from 1981 would like you to think where it belonged, where it is now in a giant warehouse, lost amongst other colonialized stolen treasures. If we think that is good, sure.
Well, I mean, he would have not found, maybe this is what you were saying, but the Nazis would not have found it, but we'd still have the same amount of Nazis as we did at the beginning of this story.
True.
So we lost some Nazis, which
yes,
I think we can all agree is always a net good when you lose even a fraction of the Nazis.
Now, when you say we can all agree, I don't know about that, but I
wish we were in a time where we could all agree.
Everyone here in this two-person recording can agree.
We're both pro-dead Nazis.
Yeah. So I do agree that because they probably would have still followed, they would have followed the instructions to find Marion in Nepal, or where is she at the beginning? She's in Nepal.
She's in Nepal,
right? Yeah. So they would have found her and probably killed her.
They didn't seem too keen on negotiations with her.
Yeah. So there's that. There's a net positive there. Marion alive. Nazis dead. Ark in the possession of the British intelligence, I guess.
British intelligence?
Is it American intelligence?
Yeah.
Okay.
USA! Yeah, I mean, I guess if he hadn't gotten involved, it would still be... I mean, I see what you're saying, but we wouldn't have had all the, the excitement.
Hijinks. Yeah,
some hijinks, some punch. A Nazi went through a propeller blade. That's kind of fun.
We did. Huh? We would have had not near as much daring done. We got problematic portrayal by Alfred Molina in his debut role right off the bat.
His first movie role, yeah.
We're going to get right into the stereotypes at the very beginning. Okay. Indiana Jones, this movie, Raiders of the Lost Ark. It's a classic movie, and it's going to be hard for me as someone who loved it growing up not to give it maybe too many passes. Also, this movie, as we mentioned in the intro, is also paying homage to many movies from even further in the past. And so it's like double stereotyping, where it's like, it's just fine that we're just taking sacred items from these people and they're mad and they're like shooting darts at us. What a bunch of dicks. Well,
why are these Jovitos trying to stop me from stealing their things?
Yeah, and it's kind of a little bit gray area because arguably he's taking it so that this worse guy doesn't take it. But that seems like damning with faint praise a little bit.
Are you talking about the Ark of the Covenant, or are you still talking about the Jovitos, relic?
The relic at the beginning of the movie is what I'm talking about right now.
Yeah, because that just seems like for his own... he's just sort of racing against, because we even hear about Forrestal, this archaeologist that we find the body of, in the temple, was also looking for the same relic. So it sounds like a lot of people have tried to get this item, and there's not a much, moral, there's not like an ethical, like, oh, I have to get this before Belloc does. It's just like, I'm just doing it for my own glorification.
Well, and that's the whole Indiana Jones ethos, right? Is like, it belongs in a museum. And the other half of that sentence is, and not in the hands of someone who's going to sell it to the highest bidder or have it for a private collection. But it's never even in consideration that it belongs with the people whose sacred item it is. It's not even because they're non-entities. They're basically foils for this adventure. It's automatically bad. Like, there's just because there's no consideration of like, I mean, there's some kind of like half-hearted sentences about like, wait till they find out how bad Belloc is or whatever. Like, he doesn't blame them because they don't know that he's an asshole. Mm-hmm. And it's like, yes, but also
you're both stealing their stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a little torn because, I mean, one, it's that larger conversation about museums has become much more, mainstream nowadays.
Yes,
not that no one was having those conversations at the time. And I think there is part of it that because these movies are paying an homage to these old 30s movies, it does, I feel like there is progress in that there are characters that we encounter, for example, Sala in this adventure, who is an Egyptian portrayed by a Welsh guy. And so we do sort of get a perspective of an Egyptian, but it's not ideal. It's not good. It's not good because, again, Sala is portrayed by a Welsh guy, Alfred Molina, another English guy portraying a South American of some sort, presumably. He has an accent.
Mm-hmm. And also he's like immediately betrays Indy. Like, it's, Right,
exactly. And there's also... I'm not confused, but, he has two assistants with him during his intro. And I do want to talk about the intro in general, but I think this is important to talk about. He has two assistants at the beginning, and one draws a gun at one point. And I think in retrospect, we're supposed to realize he's drawing a gun on Alfred Molina's character, who is the backstabber. But he could be drawing a gun on... They could both be backstabbers for all we know. Yeah, it's... as we get into Egypt later on, it is mitigated a little bit by Salah, but... He's literally the only Egyptian we talk to. Everyone else is, again, these sort of just foils at best. Yeah. Sometimes just, anonymous diggers to be, sort of pawns between Indiana Jones and the Nazis. It's not great.
Yeah, right. Do you want to talk about this whole opening scene?
I do. After we just talked about how racist this movie can be, I really like this introduction.
I know. This is the whole thing. You have to hold both of these things in your head at the same time because it is there are many problems with it. And if a person of color like came to this and was like, hey, this is really fucked up, I would be like, yep. And then I'd be also like, did you see the thing where he runs away from the boulder? Because that's fun. It's both. It can be both. And I think you can like acknowledge this is the trouble people have, right? Like it sounds like we're shitting on the movie, and it's not that we're not, because we are, but also like, God damn, it's a lot of fun to watch him use his whip to jump across a pit, and also
to those people who get angry when we are shitting on these specific aspects of the movie, like, welcome to the 21st century. Like, sometimes the things you liked as kids can still be good, but you have to recognize that there are flaws like this. And if you don't, I probably don't want to have much of a conversation with you if you can't have these conversations.
Yeah, exactly.
But this is possibly one of the best character introductions in I was about to say modern movie. I'll say semi-modern movie now, since it is, it's coming up on its 40th birthday fairly soon.
That's past, my friend.
Is it? Oh, it's 81, isn't
81, it? 81, yeah.
Yeah, okay. So it is.
And we all know things from 81 are just old beyond belief. Am I right, Damon?
Shut the hell up! It is. I mean, the movie starts out. We only see Harrison Ford from behind, and we see him, of course, in his fedora and his jacket, and we don't see his face until a few minutes in. We see Alfred Molina and the other, helper. I don't know what even to call them.
Assistant archaeologist.
Yeah, with him, and they're sort of following behind him, and they're seeing he's not saying a thing. He's encountering like clues, and he like finds a dart in a tree, and he tastes it and leaves it behind, saying nothing. And Alfred Molina and the other guy come up, and they taste it, and they're like, Jovitos, they're 3 days behind us or whatever, some, adventure movie nonsense.
Yeah, some unreasonably expository thing about the dart.
And then, the second guy pulls a gun on maybe Alfred Molina, and Indiana Jones whips it out of his hand with his whip, with his iconic whip. And it's very easy to sort of forget. I mean, Indiana Jones has been, as we just covered, has been around as long as I have been alive. So it's very easy to sort of like forget how iconic this introduction is and how it like firmly entrenched him enough that the second movie starts with his name. They're like, you know who this fucker is. They didn't do that with The Mummy Returns. They didn't say Brendan Fraser and the Adventure of the Returning Mummy. They had to keep calling it The Mummy Returns. It's just such a really good introduction. And the whole thing, I mean, we find out that he's very competent. He's very aware of his surroundings. And then when he gets to the temple, I mean, he's showing off like, that he, beats Forrestal, and that Forrestal got tricked by that light trap with that beam of sunlight. He puts his hand in it. These spikes come out. He realizes the little stepping stones on the ground, and Alfred Molina is about to run out into the middle of the temple saying a famously stupid phrase, "Nothing to fear here." Never say that if you're in a movie. Never say piece of cake, walk in the park, or nothing to fear here. Don't say those things.
Nothing to fear. When have I've never said that.
I mean, we just got past these spikes and all these tarantulas, but definitely in this room where the item is, nothing to fear here. And he's able to pick up on all these things. And then he gets the idol and is betrayed by Alfred Molina. And then we kind of see him like in a different light that doesn't negate what we've already seen, but he kind of like he gets betrayed by his friend. He has that great moment that I really appreciated this time where after he's been betrayed by Alfred Molina and he's like falling in that pit, he's like holding on to the edge of a cliff. He grabs a root. The relief look. And he smiles a little bit like, I'm going to be fine. And then the root gives a little bit and he has a really great, I feel like it just like perfectly encapsulates this character, like almost like as perfectly as you can do within like 5 minutes of a movie.
Well, yeah, you get
and then we find out he's afraid of snakes. After all of that, he's not scared of spiders. He doesn't lose his cool around, darts flying at his face. But the minute there's a snake in the seat of his plane, he freaks out. And the guy says, "Get backbone." Like, it's so like cliche that he is afraid of snakes now. But like, that is a really great like comedy beat. And plays into the plot later.
Foreshadowing, yeah. But my favorite thing is the moment when that turns on a dime is like he's very competently come all this way, and then you see him like do this really smart calculation in the most famous chin scratch since The Thinker, where he weighs out a bag of sand and
against the idol.
The funny thing is like I guess it's like. It's not lost to history because if anybody watched this movie, they understand. Like, that fails. Like, that is an absolute failure.
Wrong, yeah.
Yeah, it is wrong. He gets it wrong. So I don't know if he got the weight wrong or what. It doesn't matter. Like, so all of his stuff, like, and he's like, cockily grabs it, as the whole thing sinks down and the boulder gets released. Like, it immediately, like, is like, oh shit. And then we're just on a roller coaster after that, and then he gets betrayed and the boulder and it's very good. And
it's a fine line to walk because he could if you tipped in either direction, he would either like look like a doofus. And it's to the movie's credit that even though he does essentially fail in like not setting off the final trap, he still looks like amazingly competent while also like approachable and like I think I said in the intro, like he doesn't fall into the John McClane trap where he like becomes too competent that it is completely, it keeps you at arm's length from liking him. He really does walk a very fine line of, seeming like a superhuman and also completely, what's the word I'm looking for? Fallible. That's the word I'm looking for.
Right. Yeah. I think any good main character, you see, you like want to be him, or you admire his qualities, but also see that he's deeply flawed. Like, not just because he he fucked up with, but like as the movie goes along, you see he's like kind of arrogant and kind of selfish, and then he's done bad things in the past that like, piss Marion off, and he's pissed these other people off, and he's, it's compelling. I mean, that's a good character, right? Is he like, you don't go like, he's got a cool hat and a whip. He does. Those are cool things, but those aren't character traits. Those are items that he
it does play into his iconography. Like, I think part of it is like creating a well-developed character, but also I think Spielberg was aware enough, especially like basing this off of like those old Republic serials and stuff, of like, I want you to be able to recognize this character from like a silhouette almost, which is like a rule in animation and cartooning. Like, I want you to be able to recognize this character from a silhouette, and it really does work. Like, give him a few like iconic pieces of clothing, an iconic weapon, and iconic stubble, and you got it.
Give him that iconic stubble that you can see in silhouette.
If you're really close, and if it's like a really high quality JPEG.
I really liked the pilot that's waiting for him on the boat is just fishing, and he sees Indy like running, and then the tribe is shooting darts and chasing him. He's being chased by like 100 people, and he's yelling, Jock, I think is his name. He's like, he's fishing, and he like can't quite decide what to do because he's got a bite.
Something on it, yeah.
And so he's like, I love that whole bit is so good because, of course, eventually he just throws his pole away and starts the plane, and they narrowly escape. But like, it's just, it was played really well because he's just like, can I catch this fish first? Like you can tell that's like, do I need
There's a calculation going on.
Right. It's just a good bit. It's just a couple of beats of comedy. And I like that too. I love the comedy adventure mix, which is, a classic thing to do. And I don't think it takes away from the stakes at all. Like, of course, you don't necessarily think that Indiana Jones is going to die, but it does feel like there are,
especially because I just started my popcorn. Like,
I just started, but people have died already. Like both of his people that he came with betrayed him and died. Like, now they're a skeleton of another person in the thing. We've had like 3 on-screen dead bodies at this point already. So it's like,
really
it's
racking them up.
Yeah, it's not like this whole thing is without stakes, but at the same time, it's just so fun. And you start to get just little teases of the theme, of the John Williams theme, which we really don't get until pretty far into the movie, like for real. And it's such a nice moment. Like,
I guess we get a little bit of it, and as they fly into the sunset at the end of the scene, where is the first time it actually gets played in full?
I think it's not until like he gets on the submarine, on the U-boat.
Oh, really?
And then you hear, that's where you get like all the way. There's a ton of references to it, but that's where it's like all the way, like dun 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 dun, like big and fortissando, like it's like fortissimo. Oh, wow. I mean, sorry,
fortissimo, of course, very strong.
Make it sound like I said fortissimo and not fortissimo. I'm a musician. I should get that correct.
We do get Tyler. I feel like he gets almost a sort of a superhero element. Like Tyler noticed when we were watching that he's almost a completely different person when he's in professor mode. He almost pulls a Clark Kent where he's a little bit like stammery and distracted. Yeah, very mumbly. I mean, you could equate this to like, this isn't his passion for archaeology. His passion is being out in the field and, killing Nazis, I guess. But, he has to be a professor to pay the bills. I do have to hand it to him. It's nice to hear of a professor who apparently is not fucking his students, despite the students' best efforts.
I mean, unless you count the whole whatever happened with him and Marion, because
technically not a student, I don't think.
There's something untoward going on there.
Oh, no, I'd like to bring up, we can talk about the Marion thing, but in this instance, one of his students has written "love you" on her eyelids, 1 word per eyelid, thank you. Which I'm like, did you have someone else do it? But you'd have to do it yourself because you'd have to be sensitive to the amount of weight you're putting on your own eyelids.
I mean, you can do, if you can do eyeliner, you can write "love you" on your eyelids.
I guess that's true.
You just got to do one eye at a time.
Yeah. Do you keep the eye closed so it dries? You don't want to like have it like smeared all in your folds.
Do you think it was ballpoint?
Well, I mean, you have to. I mean, I'm not a pen historian. I mean, I don't know what type of pens we were looking at in the 1939 or 38. What is this? Do you know?
We weren't into Bic yet. We weren't there yet.
No.
Didn't have the technology.
But he is distracted by it and doesn't seem particularly interested in his students. Thank you. Thank you for your service, Dr. Jones.
That was kind of weird, right? Like, why? Just to show that he's handsome and
I think it was just, hey, you know who's the new hotness currently in 1981? Harrison fucking Ford.
Fair enough.
And Phyllis Xanthopoulos would say, yes, he is. So I think it was just playing off of that, why in every Marvel movie is all the men constantly shirtless?
Yeah, but you don't. Yeah, that's true.
To get me to buy a ticket, I can look at screenshots online, but you couldn't do that at the time.
Couldn't do that in 1981. We did not have pornographic technology in 1981.
We just couldn't do it. You had to wait for a magazine of screenshots of Harrison Ford to come in the mail in a manila envelope. What was the time?
Screenshots.
Of just not even, I mean, there's no porn in this movie, so you'd just be getting shots of Harrison Ford fully clothed. Maybe a third button undone?
Brody comes up and is talking about, he hands him some other items he got, and Brody's like, of course the museum will buy them, no questions asked. And it was always like, no questions asked.
Yeah, that's a good point. I didn't even catch that. You motherfuckers. He did mention, Marcus says, the International Treaty of Preservation of Antiquities. He mentions this, and I was like, is the treaty take stuff from brown people and put it in our building?
And I don't care what you do, don't tell me. And here's
no questions asked. I don't want to know how many Jovitos died to get these rocks.
It's not great. Hitler did have some obsession with the occult, right? I think it's exaggerated for this, but
I didn't look into this. I don't know how much Hitler. I know Ronald Reagan did. Is that the same thing? Although Ronald Reagan didn't look for the Ark of the Covenant. I don't know.
Did he really?
Did you look into this?
No. And now I wish I would have. I thought that was part of an actual thing, but now I'm realizing that it's mostly, I'm getting most of that information from Indiana.
You realize that this isn't,
this is not a documentary, it turns out. We're looking it up.
I am, but you know where I ended up. Fucking Wikipedia.
Yeah, I think we just got to accept that we don't really know.
Yeah, I don't know how much that is based. I should have looked it up, but I didn't.
Okay, well,
I know you guys are coming here for
because neither of us know shit about
information.
Neither of us know shit about what we're talking about. So, power of God or something, he says at some point.
Power of God or whatever. Apparently, the reason Marcus Brody is there at all is to introduce him to these two guys from the government. Harrison Ford is kind of like the teacher in your elementary school who just had a cart that she was just walking down. She had an overhead projector in it, all her books. She didn't have an assigned classroom. She just had stuff ready to go. And so he's like, hey, I want you to meet these two guys. And so Harrison Ford just picks up a bunch of stuff, just seemingly random, and just walks it over to a large lecture hall.
Yeah.
And just starts, and luckily had all this information about the Ark of the Covenant, something he didn't know we were even going to talk about, ready to go.
In a very old looking book.
Yeah, very giant. I don't know if it was a Bible or just an unrelated book, but it was a giant book with a latch, like a fucking Harry Potter book. And opened right to the page of the Ark of the Covenant, shooting lasers, killing all the Canaanites. It was a lot of fun. Has my favorite line, some biblical humor. Even Mom could enjoy this. One of the government guys goes, good God. And Marcus says, yes, that's just what the Hebrews thought. Oh, Marcus, you are the living end. Oh, and Marcus, I feel like Marcus is my camp icon. That might be mostly based on his appearance in in the third movie.
Yes.
But he does get some sassy quips in this one where they're talking about the history of the Ark of the Covenant. And they talk about how it may have been taken by a pharaoh and taken to the city of Tanis. And then months after it was taken there, according to legend, the city of Tanis was consumed by the desert, wiped clean by the wrath of God, is what Marcus says. I always liked that as a kid and would sometimes pause the movie so I could say it aloud myself.
Wiped clean.
Wiped clean by the wrath of God.
He also, like, I mean, we can talk about this more when we cover the third movie, but his character gets a little bit of a reworking because he's a lot more like
he's very professional in this one.
Professional, and he's not like, he doesn't seem like grim or mean or anything, but like he's kind of a doofus in the third movie, and it's funny.
He's my favorite.
Like, yeah, and I actually really like that. We'll get into it, but like that's kind of not his vibe here. He's more just like a competent museum curator.
Yeah, he seems to be exposition machine, essentially. He's there
Basil
to sort
Exposition,
of tell us, he's Basil Exposition. He tells us about the Ark of the Covenant along with Harrison Ford's character. And then he sort of, in the scene at Indiana's house, he sort of lays the stakes of what's going on here. 1, Nazis bad. 2, Ark powerful. And we also learned that Indiana Jones doesn't believe in all this hocus pocus.
Power of God or something.
As Marcus is sort of saying, it's not like anything you've searched for before. Harrison Ford grabs his gun and says, Marcus, you sound like my mom. You don't think I'm worried about all this hocus pocus? And you know what a careful guy I am, and throws his gun across the room into his suitcase, like the NRA would tell you to do.
I like, you know what a cautious fellow I am. I do like that. It's a good line. Do you want to talk about the Ark yet, or do you want to get to that later?
Let's get to where we're going in order. Why not?
Okay.
Fuck it. So at this point, he decides that he explains this to the government guys, but essentially he's looking for a sort of a medallion.
MacGuffin? To get a different MacGuffin? To find the big MacGuffin.
This is a sub-MacGuffin.
Yeah.
MacGuffin A is a medallion.
Eventually married Faith Hill. Sorry.
Yes. We learned that there is a staff that would be topped with this medallion that it would take to a certain map room in Tanis, and it would show you the exact spot that the Ark is buried. This is some Legend of Zelda nonsense. Why would you need this if you lived in Tanis? Wouldn't there just be a giant building that's like, Ark here? Why would you need to know where the Well of the Souls is if you hadn't already planned for your city to be consumed by the desert and wiped clean by the wrath god? Like, why would you make this crazy map room? How convoluted was this city? Was it like France? Was it like Paris? I remember going to Paris and being like, where the fuck am I? Every building looks the same.
When there's also like this preserved perfect model of the city, which just that in of itself is very odd, because how long has that been there? Was this did you build this after it was buried in the sand?
Why would you build it? No, you have to build it contemporaneously with the rest of the city. And it also raises questions like, are there other medallions? If I'm like just looking for the local bodega, do I have to get a specific medallion on a staff of a specific height and be like, where is that place? Is this like proto like MapQuest, Google Maps?
Yeah.
Find nearest hotel, and then I just get a 5-foot staff with a specific medallion with an emerald in the center to say, okay, there's a Holiday Inn around the corner, Jake.
You just type in giant snake pit near me, and it directs you to the next couple.
Don't get me wrong, though, as much as we are making fun of how stupid this is, I loved all of this.
Oh, it's awesome.
This nonsense.
I mean, it is...
I could hear the sighs coming off of Tyler, even when he wasn't sighing, like some sort of aura version of sighing. But I was like, yeah, the map room.
It is very much like a Legend of Zelda thing, which I also love. So
right. Lara Croft, show us where on the map we're supposed to go.
Yeah. So how does this, from your experience as a former biblical scholar...
I was a religious studies minor, so essentially I am an expert.
Right. So how does what they've described of the Ark so far, how does that line up with your experience of it?
My personal experience of the Ark of the Covenant?
Well, your experience of reading about it.
It was hard to tell how many cubits wide it was. I wish they could have gotten a cubit stick just so I could make sure that, because after this movie ended, me and Tyler I grabbed my Bible, which was at arm's length. And by arm's length, I mean was upstairs in the bookcase we don't use that much. And I looked up the Ark of the Covenant, right? I had to unlatch it. And I looked it up, and most of the references to the Ark of the Covenant, it feels like in the Bible, are telling me how big it is. Oh my God, you guys, you need an editor. I understand this probably developed from an oral tradition, but once you started writing this down, you just have to tell me how many cubits wide it is once. I don't need to hear it every time you mention it.
Show, don't tell.
Because like they tell God saying like, okay, here's what I want you to do. You're going to be building an Ark of the Covenant, of course. I want it 1 cubit wide, 1 cubit deep, 1.5 cubits across. I want, I want the mercy seat on top with cherubim facing each other. Their wings shall be, outstretched from each other. And then like 7 chapters later, it's like, and then Gregory starts making the fucking ark, and he made it 1 cubit wide, 1 cubit deep, 1.5 cubits across. I'm like, for fuck's sake, we already know how many cubits.
I'll tell you what I learned in...
and that's why I became an atheist. I was like, I'm not reading this shit.
I'm not doing this. What really bothered me about it in Sunday school when I learned is that...
when you all had to make your own ark?
Well, is that it's like, I just learned that an ark is a giant boat. And now, you're trying to tell me something else. I don't understand.
I feel like actually you have unlocked a memory just then with me when I first watched Raiders of the Lost Ark with my kids, or with my parents.
This is a future memory.
Oh, Chaucer, the name I chose for my child for some reason. How I miss you
Chaucer's
preemptively. I'm nothing if not pretentious.
It's going to get beat up so much.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, he's also been raised by me, so I presume he probably acts a little bit like me. So, sorry, you were fucked from the beginning. I couldn't. What am I supposed to name you? There's no name to get you out of this.
Just Chaucer and Zendaya, you're two.
Zendaya Xanthopoulos. What the fuck were we talking about? When I was a kid, I think I was like, what's the ark? Asking my mom what the ark was, and she said like something like, it's from the Bible. And so immediately, like, my first thought is the most child-friendly book of the Bible, the one where the entire world ends and everyone drowns except for like 5 guys.
Except for 2
is
giraffes.
Noah's Ark. So I'm naturally like, where's the boat? And then I see this gold box. I'm like, fuck this.
But there's nothing about people's faces melting or laser beams.
No. There are laser beams, and there's even, just to show you what an asshole the Old Testament God is. At one point, the ark is on like a wagon being transported, and it's about to fall off, and some poor hapless Israelite is like, whoop, let me get that. And he grabs it to stop it from falling. Guess what happens? Because God likes everything just so. Thank you very much. Please keep your hands off my box. Oh, you were trying to help it? Zap, you're dead. Sorry. Fuck off.
For touching it?
Yeah, you're not supposed to touch it. Even if it's about to fall off the goddamn
that's why the poles.
Truck. Hey, Tippy, come on in. Did you get that on mic?
Yeah.
She's like, you're screaming in here about God. I thought you were going to talk about Noah's Ark. You're talking about some lame-ass gold box.
Are we going to get Tippy on cam?
No, she's just staring. This is so creepy. She's such a fucking creep. So my door she doesn't like closed doors in the house. So when I closed the door, I just pressed it as much as I could against the door frame. Yeah. And then all I see is the door slowly opening, and my computer is blocking where she would be. So all I see is the door slowly opening, and all I can see is blackness because there are no lights on in the hallway. And then, so chills go down my spine. And then I see her looking at me, and I'm like, come on in. And then she's walked away now. She's not even in here. She just wanted to be a fucking creep.
Okay, so Ark of the Covenant. So
yes, I was disappointed it wasn't the famous ark, the most famous biblical ark.
So there is Do they
So
describe
there are
melting?
lasers. I don't know about face melting, but there are, hey, don't touch it or God's going to kill you. Yes, even in an accident. There are no caveats. There are no footnotes to this rule. Don't touch the fucking thing.
Why? Because it's just the 10 Commandments, not even the original 10 Commandments.
No, they are the original 10 Commandments.
So they're the broken ones. The pieces
They're the broken ones
Okay,
that were
gotcha.
written on by the hand of God
Okay.
rather than the second one. By the way, all I can think of right now is Mel Brooks as Moses coming down from Mount
15.
Sinai. I've got brought you 10 commandments.
That is a very good bit. Now all I'm thinking of is Joseph Smith being like, I've got the golden plates. No, you cannot see them. Don't
At
worry
least
about
Moses
it.
had them, presumably had commandments. He went up for 40 days, even if God wasn't writing them. At least he had something at the end of it.
Right.
But Joseph Smith's just like, trust me on this. They're in a hat where you
Just-
store gold plates. Thank you very much.
I have them here. That's just paper. I copied them onto this regular.
Well, if you could just see the gold plates, then it would be evidence that you're ooh, that's a no-go, bro, says Joe Smith. Even his fucking wife couldn't see him.
Well, because then it was an addendum later that he would get more wives. Yeah,
Because it ain't a chick. You wouldn't get it.
he added that. So
The golden plates were the original Star Wars, where a husband explaining, like, oh, you wouldn't. It's not for you.
You
It's
don't
a me
understand.
thing.
It's canon.
Can we go back to I think we've skipped over Marion with me screaming about map rooms and the Ark of the Covenant. Or do you want to talk about the Ark some more?
Before we talk about Marion, I do want to talk about the first appearance of Harrison Ford as Indiana Jones, wook and goo in a suit, as I like to say, which is wearing a suit to get on his airplane, looking real fine.
Oh, yeah.
It's got the nice, because he had his professorial, tweed with the elbow patches. Not a bad look.
Oh,
But
I mean, of course.
But not quite the level of gangster, nice fedora. The like
His formal fedora, his
formal
dress blues
adventure wear.
for the plane ride. He was looking good, double-breasted suit. He does have his formal fedora. You can meet the queen in it. I like that.
You could do doffing.
You can doff. You can, if you're flummoxed, you can sort of push it up with your thumb and just sort of, wipe your brow a little bit. That's a nice one. Or if you wanted to catch some Z's on the plane,
Like he does.
just pop it
on.
45-degree angle over your eyes.
Versatile.
It's a verse. It's a verse hat.
Mary. Moving on. Sorry.
Well, we also, in that, we meet one of the most famous characters from the entire quadrilogy, the Red Line of Travel. Is in that scene. One of the most famous icons from Indiana Jones. And I like that they've stuck with it no matter what.
Yeah.
I also like that when it's on a plane, it's a straight line. In Indiana Jones 3, they're in a car. It's very much more windy.
Yeah.
Submarine also gets windy. I like it. I don't know why. It's just a
very
little
nice.
thing. I also like old maps of the world.
Yes.
So I do appreciate them
French
flying
Indochina.
over French
Yeah.
Indochina, landing in Palestine. It's just fun. Maps are fun. That's why I love the map room.
They are fun. I do like it. Okay,
So let's talk about. So he lands in Nepal. That's where the red line stops. Not the red line in New York. I don't know where that stops. Coney
you can
Island.
get there, but you gotta get on Blue Line, and then you gotta go underneath the Atlantic Ocean.
Pacific Ocean, my friend.
Oh yeah. Sorry.
Which means you'd also have to go over the entire continental United States.
I was thinking going from New York, so I guess I was taking the extra long way. Either way, it's pretty far.
Is the canal? The canal would be there, so you could take it through the. You wouldn't have to go all the way down past South America. You can go through the Panama Canal.
Yes.
A canal, Panama.
That's true. That's probably the best way to get from New York to Nepal via imaginary subway line. So Marion is running a bar.
Yes.
Nepal owns this bar, I guess.
Her father, we find out in the scene with the top men, with the government men, is Abner Ravenwood, who was, I guess, the mentor to Indiana Jones, the way I gathered.
This is what I
gathered. What?
This is what I made up in my head. This is not Indiana Jones canon.
The kids call this
headcanon.
Headcanon.
This is headcanon for me. Is Indiana Jones was in his doctorate or grad school with Ravenwood as his mentor. and he met, of course, Ravenwood's daughter, Marion, who was an undergrad at the time, in my imagination, just because otherwise it's gross.
Mm-hmm.
And they had a relationship, and Ravenwood didn't like that because it's his daughter, and Indiana Jones is a bit of a cad, maybe.
He's a gadabout.
Yeah. Maybe he just didn't like his daughter dating anyone. That's what I imagine. And then eventually they break up, either because Indiana Jones just wants to be a rambling man, or maybe he was trying to honor Dr. Ravenwood or whatever, but for some reason they break up and Marion is very mad. That's what happens in my head. Not she's 15 and he's 25, because fuck that. Gross.
I was going to say, your headcanon lets you sleep at night.
Yes, exactly. It's not explicitly said that anything gross, but she says I was a child. Now we can say that it was figurative.
Yeah, I don't think she's a literal child, but she references 10 years several times throughout the movie. Mm-hmm. So presumably they had some sort of sexual relationship 10 years ago. And I don't know how old Karen Allen is in this, but I mean, the vibe I'm getting is she's mid-20s, which would make her mid-teens.
Yeah. I'm going to say she's 28. And he's 35. So it was definitely, on the edge of problematic. Yeah. She was young, and he was an older, he should have known better. And she was just a starry-eyed undergrad. Again, I'm putting that in the script. It's
Sounds
not
great.
in there. There is, and this is just IMDb, so I don't know how true this is, but it says she's 25 in the script. Apparently, according to IMDb, which makes that a real problem. And I'm just going to say, first of all, I don't know if that's true anyway. Even if it is true, it doesn't make it into the movie, so it doesn't matter. You know what I mean? They don't say in the movie. So you can kind of, it leaves it like they broke up. You know what I mean? And she was young. Right. And that's why she's mad. That's all that really matters.
My headcanon is he fucked a teenager, and Abner Ravenwood, her father, did not appreciate it, and they had a falling out because, Indiana Jones is a goddamn creep.
Hard to be on Indiana's side in this headcanon.
He does marry her by the fourth movie, if you want to.
Oh, spoiler.
Oh, yeah, sorry. Spoilers for a 14-year-old movie.
Okay, so
even if you marry that 14-year-old movie later, it's still not good.
No, still a problem.
Still inappropriate and criminal. Yeah. You fucking creep.
I hate when you have to do that math. I mean, I love doing age math because it's a fun thing because people don't expect you to do it. And then you think about it for a second and you're like, as soon as I hear two different ages or different years, I'm always just trying to figure out what age everyone is. That's I thought that was normal until one of my friends was pointed out that it was weird that I did that. Because I would always be like, that means he was 31. I was just we had a gig once. I don't know how interesting the story is, but we had a gig once, and the planner, the coordinator, had to take us somewhere else on the property in a golf cart just because it was too far away. And while she was talking, she was like, I met my boyfriend 10 years ago. I'm 24 now, and I was 19 then. And I was like, that's not 10 years ago. I just said it. I couldn't stop myself. I said it out loud to this woman we were working for. I was like, that's not 10 years. And she just kept talking, luckily, because
why would she? I mean, did she actually put them that close in?
Those were not the numbers, but she said numbers that just weren't correct. They were did not add up. And she was like, we've been together for 10 years. We were married for 4. And before that, we were together for 9. And I'm like, that's not 10.
People are creeps.
Yeah.
How hard is it to not fuck a teenager? When I was a teenager, I wasn't fucking teenagers, despite what I wanted to do.
For me. I've never done that, actually, to be honest.
I've never had the opportunity to do that.
My favorite thing about Marion, okay, so she's a Spitfire, right?
Oh, yeah.
But also, apparently, she reacts exactly how I would want to react if there was a monkey on my shoulder, which is cute. What an adorable creature.
Puts its hand in her mouth.
Yeah.
It's monkey hand. And while she's saying, what an adorable creature. And then I think Salah's wife is like, well, then he's welcome in our home. And she's like, don't do that on my account.
She's so nice. I want to hang out with Salah's wife. She gets like 2 lines.
Yeah, she does seem really nice. And all of the kids are very adorable. Yeah, Marion is, in this viewing, I had not a lot of trouble with Marion, but I kept like vacillating between she is a Spitfire and she's written that way, and Karen Allen plays her that way. But then the movie sometimes is just like, okay, we need you to be a damsel in distress now. And sometimes it seems like it's trying to subvert that, obviously probably playing into the old tropes from these older movies and serials. Yeah. And then sometimes I'm just like, no, but now she's just acting like a damsel in distress and seemingly completely helpless, even though we know she is not. She does that thing that I hate in Damsels in Distress, where no matter the situation, she just keeps yelling the hero's name. Yeah. And I'm like, you're tied in a basket. What makes you think, and being run like by men who are carrying that basket elsewhere, what makes you think Indy can even hear you? Right. And then later when she accidentally is trying to, it
does work because she like waves and yells Indy and he sees her.
Right. I guess you're right. She's more effective than Indiana Jones in getting that art from the Nazis. One of her plans actually works. But then later when she's trying to remove that Nazi from the cockpit, when they're trying to stop the Ark from being flown out, she yells Indy while she's trapped in the cockpit, while he's in the middle of a fight with a giant burly WWF-style Nazi. And I'm like, what is he supposed to do right now? I thought you were a Spitfire. Figure it out.
Yeah.
I mean, it was very few and far between. I mean, Marion is my favorite of all the Bond girls, mostly because my second in the running is a secret Nazi. So, I mean, she has to be my favorite. But there were a lot of times in this, especially when she gets dropped into the snake pit. And not that I don't want to fault her for it, because I probably would act the same way in the giant snake pit. She's like crawling all over Indiana Jones, who has a literal phobia of snakes. And he's managing to keep it together, lady. But those moments are few and far between, but they did stand out to me because it felt like her character was just doing like a 180 and then she'd switch back to Spitfire mode.
It does seem like they're kind of trying to have it both ways, because like when she's captured and who's the Belloc, when she's in Belloc's tent, she kind of plays up like he's clearly like crushing on her in a creepy captive way. And she kind of plays into it. She like, we get foreshadowing before when we first cut to her at the bar, she's like drinking this guy under the table, and then she does that to him. She basically like seemingly has no effect on her. So
I was amazed, like when in that first scene where she's doing shots at the bar, she just sort of takes a moment. We see like at least 12 empty shot glasses in front of her, and she just sort of walks to the wall, sort of rubs her temples, and then she's good to go. Yeah, and ready to fight Nazis, I guess. Like 5 minutes later, the scene with Belloc is interesting because Indiana Jones stumbles upon her after he finds the map room. He stumbles upon her tent, and she says, fucked up, right? It is a fucked up scene. I don't hate it necessarily. I think it shows that he's sort of singular minded. And she says they're combing, while he's like untying her, she says they're combing the whole desert for you. And he realizes like if he takes her, they will know he is around here and it would blow his entire scheme. Right. And so he leaves her there. There is some the fucked upness now that like registers with me is like, you seeing a woman tied up in a tent, you don't know what the situation is, and you're leaving her there. I don't think the implications were intentional, but it is like, it's icky in retrospect. And she does drink Belloc under the table. And that's part of her scheme. Like, that's her Spitfiredness coming out. And her plan is to like drink him under the table and then just leave as he, once he passes out. She does seem to genuinely like Belloc, which I feel like complicates things in a fun way. Like it makes him a little bit more interesting. We get a fun scene of him not being like a Bond villain, but like actually genuinely connecting with someone in a fun, like playful manner, even though he's a Vichy Nazi sympathizing fucker. But then she runs into Tote, who I don't think his name is ever said in the movie. Yeah. But he's the creepy guy who burns his hand on the medallion and is genuinely like fucking creep.
And also has that cool folding nunchuck hanger. That was a pretty good bit.
It's true. I think he's almost in terms of iconography, he like is the anti-Indiana Jones. I feel like they sort of use the same tactics to like establish his look in this movie. He has a black trench coat, a black leather trench coat on top of that. That I'm like, dude, you're in the desert. Why are you wearing this? You should be wearing seersucker or linens, something light, something breathable. He's creepy. He seems to breathe through his mouth a lot. He sweats a lot. He has a really weird hairline when he briefly takes off his hat to dab his sweat. He also has a medallion burned into his hand that they've used to like replicate the medallion that they weren't able to get from Marion. He's fucking creepy.
Very.
And when they fail at the end, he laughs, which is like, it's inexplicable because he probably will be killed for his failures by the Fuhrer if the Fuhrer ever found out, and if his face wasn't melted out by the power of God anyway. But it adds to his creepiness in that, like, in the face of like failure, he just laughs, like just pure chaos creepiness. I like him. Not like.
I don't like him. I like him. I love to hate. One more thing on Marion. So the other thing that's kind of frustrating about her is they set her up as independent, and then also kind of all she cares about is, you know, being with Indiana. Like there's like moments of, you know, the sort of just trying to escape the situation, but like she's also like kind of, I don't know, immediately goes back. And I could also kind of see the realisticness of this, of like, this is someone that's like from her past, and she like kind of falls back into the sort of lovesick late teen in my head canon. You know, but because she's like very independent and is like making it on her own and like fights off, but then also she becomes, like you said, damsel in distress kind of thing. And she kind of like falls back into that and is like, you know, it's a little frustrating.
I see what you're saying. My interpretation of her in Mongolia is not necessarily, I mean, she is making it and she seems to have a community there, but she says at one point, like, you stranded me out here in the middle of nowhere. And she talks about wanting, I think at some point she references wanting to get back to the States, but couldn't because she was out here with Abner on his like stupid, you know, search for all these trinkets and stuff. So the vibe I got is that she was stuck out here with Abner. He died. She had no way to get back home. And she sort of like, she just basically, you know, started tending bar or started running this bar in some way. So the vibe is not only that Indiana Jones broke up with her, broke her heart, but also by leaving, abandoned her to, you know, just being at the whims of her father, who I guess his expeditions she wasn't as passionate about. So the vibe I got was not that she is sisters are doing it for themselves, but rather goddamn men who have abandoned me and left me here. I think the vibe I get from her, she does fall. Once she gets to Egypt, she's obviously very much smitten again with Indiana Jones, and they're having a sort of flirty relationship, and it's going both ways. But when she's in Mongolia, like the way she phrases it is like she wants her fucking money back that he promised her, the $5,000 he offered her for that medallion, 3,000 of which just got burned up in her bar that burned to the ground. And I think she's seeing him as her ticket out of here. I'm your goddamn partner. I think that's very literal. I am coming with you to get out of here.
Yeah, fair enough. I feel like that isn't played up as like, because they start to have this flirtation, it kind of goes immediately into the romance part of it, which I understand. I don't know. I don't have like a better suggestion, but it is a little bit, I kind of want to see more, you know, you want to see more of the sort of like true independence aspect of it, as opposed to the sort of damsel in the love interest. But it's also like, I mean, it's a trope of this sort of thing that I feel like Marion 35% plays against it, subverts it, and 65% just does it. In a good way. Like, she does it well. Both parts of it, Karen Allen does well. But it's like, you know, it's just spicy lady. I want to see more.
She is a spicy lady. I think, though, I wonder if maybe that was the place that pop culture was at that point, because I think also of Princess Leia as a little bit also in that mold, in that she is oftentimes being, you know, trapped, kidnapped, and put in a metal bikini. But sometimes she'll also strangle, you know, a Tatooine gangster on his pleasure skiff. But, you know, a lot of times she is also just, you know, in a room with the rebel generals and saying, we're 5 minutes to the Death Star. We are 4.2 minutes to the Death Star. She's just sitting there watching. She doesn't get to be necessarily part of the action as much as the boys do. So I wonder if that's just where we were in integrating women into the stories. To the late 70s and early 80s, that was a subversive and against type role. Yeah. And I don't want to give it too much of a pass, but I just think that maybe have been where culture was.
Well, and this is subverting. Yeah, for a room full of 99% men creating this and writing this, that's like, yeah, she's a tough cookie, but I mean, she's going to need me. That's the
right. She can't do this herself.
Yeah.
She does shoot that one henchman in the back of his head, and she blows smoke in Tote's face. I feel like we're bouncing all over the place, but I did like, there's one scene that I think this is also good comedy from Indiana Jones, where Indiana is struggling with one of Tote's Nepalese henchmen, and they're fighting over a gun, and Tote has lost patience, so he just goes, shoots them both. Mm-hmm. And they both they work together to shoot the guy who was about to shoot them.
Yeah.
It's just a funny little beat. I like it.
This is a known, we were talking about the history of the Ark, but another just historical fact, little known fact, all monkeys are secretly Nazis.
I've always said that.
And they reference this in the movie because the little monkey does a little.
If you've ever read monkey literature,
and I have.
There's some references that I'm like, oh, I don't know where you're getting these numbers, buddy. These numbers? What am I?
It was the blurst of times. There's a lot of fun fight sequences in this, and there's a lot of sort of awkward, like the whole bar fight sequence where the bar catches on fire, and it's funny because before watching this movie again, I could probably play back the major beats of it in my head just because it's iconic, but it's very awkward as a stunt. As a stunt thing, all the punches are very very old serial, very telegraphed, which is fine. I know that's the style, but it was very awkward in ways that the rest of the movie is not. Because in contrast, the Cairo street fight where they're fighting in all these different corners of Cairo and going around corners, and then there's these there's vendors everywhere, and there's people coming out of nowhere to fight, and then there's the big baskets the one that Marion's in, and it's all that is pretty masterful, that whole thing. That's shot real well, which makes me think back to the fire and the bar sequence and go why was that so weird? But it's just, I don't know if I noticed it this time, but
I did notice there is a weird beat in that bar scene where I guess they've lit some of the spilled liquor on the bar on fire, and it's slowly making its way to Indy. And one of the henchmen, one of the goons, is pushing him down on the bar. And he says to Marion, who's crouched behind the bar, whiskey, almost like Roger Rabbit, which we just watched. But he says whiskey, and then she hands him a bottle of whiskey. He bashes it over the guy's head. But what was the guy doing? Was he just so concentrating on the fire that he didn't notice that the guy was discussing things with his ally in the bar fight? It's odd. I didn't mind that scene as much, but that was one beat where I was like, wait, what is he supposed to be doing? What's going on here?
Like that. They were just kind of very theater, theater fight scene vibe. But
that scene in Dick Tracy where he punches 3 guys at once and it's just across their face.
Yeah.
And Madonna's singing.
Who is feeding the snakes that are living in this?
I have this on my notes. I don't know how to attribute this. I mean, it's a very effective scene. It's very
creepy.
Willy heebie-jeebie nonsense. But yeah,
Willy
it does
heebie-jeebie.
Who is feeding these snakes? Am I just supposed to assume that is God feeding the snakes? Because is he handling that? Are they just eating? Purpose. Are they fucking at the exact ratio so that they can cannibalize each other and not lose population density?
And how's at one point they, the way that Indy finds the way out is the snakes are like coming in this hole. And so he's
there's
like,
a wall with holes in it. Yeah.
And that's where they must be coming from. But like, why are the snakes coming in there? And it's
right.
Not
and
like
then he crashes a column through there, and then there's barely any snakes in there. I'm like, I thought this was the source of the snakes.
Yeah. It doesn't matter. This time watching it made me go like, why would all these snakes be in there? Other than it's creepy as hell, which is the answer. It would be creepy as hell. But also like the, I guess that giant statue that he ran through the wall didn't belong in a museum.
Right.
She was fine.
Sorry, Horace, I need you to bust through this wall. Yeah, and I guess it's not a load-bearing wall or load-bearing Horace either, because it just it just comes loose real quick.
Yeah. Asps. Very dangerous.
Very dangerous.
You go first.
Sala, son of Gloin.
Yes. Sala.
I like Sala. He does, I mean, I've already said he's portrayed by a Welsh guy. I feel like that's important to note. Yeah. And he is sort of like a comic relief character, essentially. Yes. He's not a fraidy cat. He's not a fraidy cat, though.
He seems kind of like, just like, even though he's this big burly guy with a loud voice, he's just like a normal guy. Like just helping his friend, which he doesn't have like superhuman. He's not afraid to jump in, but also he's not like superhuman like Indiana Jones is. You know, he's not running under cars full of Nazis, giant trucks full of Nazis.
I like him though.
Indiana's scared of Snake's face that he does. I can't do it right now, but it's like,
was that when he's face to face with that cobra?
Yeah, it's very good. Harrison
It's
Ford.
a very effective scene, even though I know there's a plate of glass there. It's very effective. I mean, it's great. I love it.
Probably wasn't great for the snakes.
No, they had to keep bringing snakes in. I think they originally said, just get us like 1,000 snakes or something. I'm making up the numbers. But once they put the snakes in the space, they're like, well, that's not a lot of snakes. And they ordered more snakes. And I think there's even some legless lizards, which are a type of lizard that is not a snake, but has no legs and is a reptile. They're in there, and then eventually they were just cutting up hoses and throwing them in there because just to fill out the room because, not
enough snakes.
Once you get enough snakes, Steven Spielberg and not enough snakes.
Well, and all the snakes were probably slithering off to the corner because they're like, why would we hang out in one writhing mass in the center of the room?
Yeah, why? Hey, we're just doing our own thing over here. Yeah, it is ludicrous. I did appreciate, this is, again, I think probably a deconstruction of the tropes, but as they're realizing the ark's about to be carted up on a plane, I think Sala just basically asks Indiana point blank, what's the plan? He's like, I don't know. I'm making it up as I go.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite lines. It was very, very Indiana Jones. So when the Nazis escape with the ark and he gets on a boat with Captain Katanga, what is this guy's deal? Why does we're just introduced to this new character and it's set up like he's going to be more to the story, it seems like to me, because he's he has this kind of grand introduction. They say his name and then he's like, yes, you'll come with me. And then he's just for a minute and then you'll just go on this U-boat and I'll be on my way.
Yeah, that's a good point. It didn't bother me, but I think that might play into the sort of Republic serials that they're referencing, because I feel like those would you'd have one scene or one episode that takes place in this one place, and then the next episode would take place in a new place, and then this would be the episode where they're on the boat and the Nazis catch up with them. And then we never see them again. It's always in these episodic sort of motions. And so, he is one of those characters that I always forget that they're, in fact, the last third of this, not that it's bad, but I always forget, I'm there's not as much iconic stuff in the last third of it. Yes. Once they finally rescue the Ark and get it on that boat, I always forget some of those elements. And I always forget about Katanga, but I like Katanga. I also like Katanga's second mate is my favorite of the boat guys, because there's this, it's very awkward, but its awkwardness I find endearing beyond measure in that they've lost Marion. The Nazis have come on board, taken the Ark, taken Marion with them. Indiana Jones has successfully hidden himself. And the second mate comes up to Katanga and says, we can't find any trace of Indiana Jones anywhere on board. And Katanga says, well, he must be here somewhere. Look again. And instead of going to do that, the second mate just sort of looks off into the horizon and he says, I found him. And Katanga says, where? And the most enthusiastic, childlike point to this big, brawny guy points and goes, there. And then that's when we hear the Indiana Jones music kick in.
Yes.
And we see Indiana Jones on top of a U-boat. And then luckily for him, it cuts to the next scene where we don't have to go, wait, how did he survive the U-boat?
Guess they didn't dive.
That is my excuse for the Katanga portion.
That makes sense. I mean, that's better than anything else I could come up with in my head, because I was just like, it seems like they're setting this guy up to do something, and he doesn't do nothing. Like he doesn't like break. He doesn't betray Indiana Jones, which would have been really easy.
And he tries to save Marion from being handed over to these guys. In a he doesn't do it purposely lecherous, but he plays into a lecherous thing. Like, let us have the girl so we can, save us some money on this thing.
He's play acting as a bad guy.
And then the Nazis, in pure like arch villain mode, is like, you do not have the right to, make negotiations. We will take what we want, and then we will decide later whether or not to blow your ship from the water. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, okay, sir, you're about to tie her to a railroad track in the middle of the ocean somehow. You're the most evil villain of evil villains.
We did, though, at this scene, get the best part of the boat, which is the like little playful love scene with him and Marion, which is very good, as he's healing from his multiple wounds, and she's
so many wounds. It is very cute. It's Harrison Ford, very pouty and bratty a little bit, but to his credit, he has just survived a huge fight on a truck convoy, which I would like to go back to. But he does give his famous line, it's not the years, it's the mileage.
Yes.
He does get bashed in the face with a mirror accidentally by Marion, who is flipping a two-way mirror, hits him in the face. Very cute. Yeah, it's a very cute, playful love story. He falls asleep before things happen. Although she does, in the morning, she wakes up and she's not wearing her negligee. Yeah. So apparently he woke up healed enough to go to town.
Yeah, it seemed like something happened in the nighttime.
I did want to talk about that convoy scene, if at least for the very little bit that it always reminds me, yes, Mercedes-Benz was complicit in the Holocaust. Thank you for reminding me, Steven Spielberg.
Yeah. He didn't want you to forget.
He's like, that Mercedes-Benz logo at the front of the truck is always just in frame. So I'm reminded, yes, he made cars for the fucking Nazis.
Lest you forget. Also, seems like Indiana left his whip behind.
It does seem he left his whip, and I don't think we see it for the rest of the movie. So that makes sense. He also leaves, once he gets on the U-boat, he loses his fedora and jacket. He loses those behind. So we never see him in those again either.
Guess we'll
He's
never
probably
see
got
them
like
again.
6 or 7 back home, though, don't you think? Like a Superman situation?
Absolutely. Just a closet full of that outfit.
That convoy fight, though, it's really good.
Yes. Yeah. It is very...
I usually hate car chases. I'm usually bored out of my mind by car chases. But it's a car chase mixed in with a literal fight as like... He's driving a truck with the Ark in it, but there's Nazis in the back of the truck. So they're coming out from the back of the truck like fucking cockroaches, climbing down the sides, and eventually the final guy climbs over the top so Indiana Jones can't see him. It's so good. And all the head Nazis are in the Rolls Royce in front of us, looking behind them, watching the whole thing as Indiana Jones simultaneously is trying to run them off the road and all the other trucks in the convoy off the road. It's so good. It's a good scene.
Also, a very clear homage to like the, Conestoga wagon, serial stuff. Like he's, does the iconic, like he's hanging by his whip and dragged along the ground.
And approaches by horse. Like he sort of like, almost like a bandit in a Western. He approaches by horse and, climbs on to the side of the truck, Mercedes-Benz truck. And then my favorite part is when the final guy gets run over, and he has almost like a Wile E. Coyote. He gets run over. So Indiana Jones gets thrown through the windshield at one point, and he crawls down the grill of the truck, underneath the truck, sticks his whip into the innards of the truck and gets dragged along behind and then climbs back over the truck into the driver's seat and beats the shit out of the guy who kind of looks like Paul Hogan. I was always distracted as a kid that he kind of looks like Paul Hogan.
Like you're beating up Crocodile Dundee. Why?
Well, Crocodile Dundee is a transphobe. We already covered that in our episode on Crocodile Dundee. So toss him out the truck. But then he does the same to this guy, to Paul Hogan. And he tries to do the same thing, but the grill breaks in his hands and he gets run over. And it's almost so, I mean, it would be gross if it wasn't so silly how he gets run over. His limbs spring up. And then when the back wheels run over him again, it does it again. So he's like a little like, I don't know, Stretch Armstrong doll. Or it's weird. It's so silly that I love it a little bit.
And you remember, guy's a Nazi.
And then you're like, fuck that guy. And he looks older, so you can't even like be like, oh, well, he was an 18-year-old, like forced probably into conscription. Like, no, this guy's a career Nazi. Fuck this guy.
Yeah. He's in it for the long haul. The only other like action thing I wanted to point out is, so later he is kind of sneaking in to the Nazis and like he does the classic thing where he beats up a soldier and then takes his uniform, but it's too small. The uniform is too small. And then another soldier comes up and just starts berating him.
For his appearance.
For his appearance, not recognizing that he's an intruder, but just thinking he has an ill-fitting uniform and is disheveled and laying on the ground. And then he like kind of takes it for a second and then just like you just see him like punch or kick off screen. You don't see actually what he does, but the guy
they were sort of over the shoulder of the berating officer of the Nazi officer. So we're just seeing Indiana Jones like respond to him like grabbing his suit lapel, and then Indiana Jones starts combing his hair and then eventually punches him or kicks him in the stomach.
Well, he kicks him and then the hat like pops up into his hands. I really like that.
It's really good.
It's a good bit.
It's a very funny bit. So let's talk about faces melting and then we can wrap up.
Yes. Yeah. Really gross. That's
every Indiana Jones movie I feel like has to have a creature bit. So you have snakes in this one. We can return to this in the later ones, but each one has a creature scene and then each one has a gross end scene. And this is the creatures were snakes and this is our gross out ending scene. The power of God comes out of the Ark of the Covenant. At first, I mean, it is fun. They open the Ark of the Covenant and they do it in full.
What are the ghosts? What are they?
Israelites? I don't know.
Canaanites being like, remember when you wholesale slaughtered us?
So Belloc like dons the traditional like priestly vestments described in the Bible that you would use when you're alone with the ark. He has the breastplate and the ephod and all, the diadem and turban and all these things. And the Nazis at one point, this is actually one of the few moments where it a little bit pays off. Like it doesn't feel like the Nazis are just like, throw some Nazis in the story.
Yeah.
It feels like there is like an irony to having Nazis seeking out this
like sacred,
authentically, exclusively Jewish token, this Jewish, find, and trying to use it for their explicitly anti-Jewish campaign of world domination. And what is his name? Gerard? I can't remember.
Dietrich,
I'll assume, is like, I am uncomfortable with this Jewish ritual. He's getting more Teutonic as I try and do a German accent. And I mean, Belloc, to his credit, is like, do you want to open it in front of Hitler and find out for the first time? Now, again, this would have been a good time for Indiana Jones to be like, hey guys, why don't we open in front of the Fuhrer? Like in the background, like put it in everyone's ear and then just go home and let the Israelite ghosts kill all the Nazis. But instead we only kill
he doesn't know exactly what's going to happen.
No, of course not.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Except he does know to not look at it.
Yeah. They didn't really reference that before, like that you couldn't look at it, which I thought was weird. Because I assumed that earlier in the story, that would just be part when he brings out his book around the G-Men. It seems like that would have been a good time to be like, yeah, and even if you look,
don't touch it, and if it accidentally opens in front of you, don't look at it. Well, yeah, I mean, I don't think. I mean, even in the Bible, I mean, the only people who are supposed to be alone with the uncovered ark is the priest, the high priest. You can't just I mean, otherwise, it's supposed to be covered at all times when you're traveling with it. You would cover it in either cloth or animal hides. And then you have to keep it in the tabernacle once you make camp for the night. You have to keep it in a very specific tent to, keep it away from everyone. It's a very shishi arc. Not anyone can get into this arc. You got a bouncer outside.
It's
so anyway, it is. There is a little bit of a. How does he know? Why can't we look at it? Maybe the ghosts, the biblical ghosts inside the Torah ghosts are like, as if they have their eyes open, kill them. Eyes closed, leave them alone.
You're
Passover rules here. Let's go. But it is a creepy scene. Like they open it and there's just sand inside of it. Tote, as I said, starts laughing. And then it starts glowing, and their equipment, because they're filming it, the Nazis are filming it, their equipment starts squealing, and then there's a weird, like, creepy, which if you ever hear that in a movie, that's bad. It either means you've been exposed to radiation, and you're about to turn into the Hulk, or the wrath of God is about to come down. And then all these ghosts come around, shoot through the eyes of some of the lesser Nazis. They're able to recognize who's in charge here. They shoot through the eyes of the lower tier Nazis, melt the faces of the two B-team Nazis, and then blow up the head of the French backstabber. Which they had to cover with the MPAA was like, you cannot have a man's exploding head just there.
Not
and
for
so they
a
had
G
to put
rating,
that
my friend. A PG rating.
That fire in front of it, which makes it even weirder. And then I do like the lid flies off into heaven, and then once it's done, it falls down.
Comes back.
In another comedic beat. It's just like bunk bunk, lands on top of the ark, perfect. And God's like, get out of here, you two.
You're good. And their hands are just like untied. Like, you're the good ones.
You're all right, you two. Now go put this in a military warehouse for the next 100 years.
Go put it in the hands of the U.S. military where nothing could go wrong.
The morally exemplary U.S. military who's never done anything questionable, never napalmed anyone, never started endless wars. It's fine. Yeah, so there you go. And then, of course, the famous top men put it in the thing.
Oh, yeah,
we'll never see it again until movie 4.
Yeah. You think?
We'll go to the verdict?
Let's do it. Let's carefully carry the verdict on long poles.
Did you bring 2 poles to carry the verdict to where we need it?
Always.
And did you bring your priestly vestments?
Yeah, I mean, they're around.
I mean, it's simple.
I'm in my home.
The holiest of holies, as I've called your home.
Damn.
Yeah.
What is your verdict?
I didn't see you there. I thought you were a ghost. Hey, guess what?
What?
There are some plot holes here. There's some age chicanery with dating your mentor's daughter. But this is a pretty good movie. It's a great movie. Some might even call it a modern classic. It's Raiders of the Lost Ark. Fuck off. Like, what do you want me to do? There's definitely a lot of stuff that'll make you make the emoji face Marion's age when you piece it together, do the old DJ math out loud. And
15. She was 15.
God damn it, she was 15. But she punches him in the jaw, so it all works out. And of course, of the way the people of color are just sort of like furniture in this movie, it feels like, with the exception of Sala. But even Sala is a little more than part comic relief, part exposition machine. I do like Sala. I like John Rhys Davies. Maybe get an Egyptian to play an Egyptian, though.
Right.
There's Egyptians. It's not a mythical land. You can just go there and hire one. But Your Inner Child is not an idiot. I forgot what I'm supposed to say during these things. Your Inner Child is not an idiot. This is a great movie. Some parts didn't age well, but it's still a really the thing about Spielberg, even as much criticism as you could lob at him, like, he knows how to fucking make a good movie. Even his shittier movies are fun because they're well made, and he knows what makes a great, especially adventure movies. He knows what he's fucking doing. Even when you're watching Tintin, it's still fun.
Yeah. I mean, you can make a top 10 list of not good overall Steven Spielberg movies, but
Always. Remember Always?
Yeah. But the craft of filmmaking is something
he didn't make the craft. He wasn't behind the craft. He didn't make that one.
You talk so much. Let me talk a little bit.
I'll mute my microphone.
He's an excellent director no matter what. Like, he knows how to make you feel what he wants you to feel. He wants you, like, when the characters, he does the classic Spielberg thing where characters are looking off screen, like behind the camera, and making you, building tension to what he does, all that stuff brilliantly. Harrison Ford's great. There's a lot of problems with this movie. Like, this is probably, I think this is the oldest movie we've ever talked about. This is like despite being a very big part of our childhood, came out before either of us were born, but it's such a big part of the 80s. Like, growing up in the 80s, like, Indiana Jones was huge because the other movies, kept making it bigger and bigger. So not only does this have like the 40 plus years of that baggage, it also is paying huge homage to even older movies. And so you've got that baggage of treating people of color a certain way, treating women a certain way. So there's lots to complain about. This movie's great. It's great. It's so fun. The cast is really good. It's fun. It's a fun adventure. I do think it drags a little bit in the third act, if we're being like really, really picky about it. Some of that stuff that we were talking about, like forgetting about, which I did too, where you're like, oh yeah, there's a whole...
Yeah, I mean, it is the weakest act, that last.
Yeah, but I mean, it doesn't ruin the movie. Like, it's still good. The melting face thing is really gross, but it's also like really fun to see Nazis get their faces melted off in one way. So,
what are you gonna do?
Yeah, Your Inner Child is not an idiot.
We can't have it now. We might as well have it in a movie.
might as well live through it in a fun adventure series. Bullet point. Raiders of the Lost Ark? Not bad. Not bad at all.
You
not
heard
bad,
it here
Stevie Spiels.
For the 6,000th time, Raiders of the Lost Ark is great.
What do you think, everybody? Email us, yourinnerchildisanidiot@gmail.com. You can call and leave us a voicemail, 615-576-0525. You can find us on social media and stuff. You can become a patron of the show, patreon.com/yourinnerchildisanidiot. We want to thank our current patrons, including
John Day,
Jeremy Powlen,
Lindsay Alice Halik.
We've been saying Jonathon Day for years now because he's been a longtime supporter of the show. It's very hard to say John. But
it's true. And we could have saved so much time in the runtime of these podcasts if we dropped those last two syllables.
Larissa Maestro.
Karen Kurd.
Heather Tuggle.
Travis Vance.
Demon Zesty.
Flawless. Captain Jean-Luc Picard.
Lindsay Nell.
The Hands of Fate.
Dan McIntyre.
Jackson has an unhealthy obsession with Damon.
The Elusive fan Gromkin.
Shit on the Cartouche.
Josh Frigo.
Funnily enough, the Cartouche is also specified in Exodus how to build the Cartouche.
Oh. Do not shit on it, it says.
So, blasphemy. Where were we?
Dramatically placed hot dog.
Dramatically placed hot dog.
The supreme ruler of this podcast.
Hizoner the Mayor.
Beth Surmont.
David Mort.
Just Cuz.
Scalfasaurus.
Dr. Malcolm's Heaving Bosom.
Particle Man.
T. Smith.
And the Zesty.
Thank you all very much. We really appreciate your support. If you want to support like them, patreon.com/yourinnerchildisanidiot. And now Damon will measure his room in cubits as I play him out with the Indiana Jones thing.
The room I'm in? It's probably like 4 cubits over here, 5 cubits here. It's an oddly shaped room, and Yahweh wanted it this way. He specifically specified that he wanted it semi-trapezoidal shaped. So we've got a slanty bit over here. That's probably 7 cubits. That part is a load-bearing cubit, so that you have to keep there. That's sort of a walk-in 4 square cubit closet, which is kind of fun. We put a little bookcase in there. It sort of allows us a little crafting space on top of the bookcase for, how many, if we're wrapping gifts, how many cubits of wrapping paper do we need to wrap each gift?
I'm getting lost in the B section of this song. I don't know what to hum you next.
If you're not careful, you eventually start singing the Superman theme, and then you have to backtrack a little bit.
And then I just went, Maria. I don't know why.
That's Sondheim again.